Yes, we're gonna wait for Alexis.
Coming back
Here
on.
she is.
Well, I thought it was a lovely job.
Yeah, it was great.
There
All
she
right,
You were worried you
Alexis,
weren't going to fill
you
the time.
are.
You did great.
Oh, yeah, that was awesome.
That's what we were just telling him.
Okay.
Hopefully we did what
Yeah.
you wanted us to do. I don't know.
I
So
have
inspiring.
a couple questions. The
Okay.
first one being, you'd mentioned this before, and I thought it was interesting. You had said like when we got married, this was it. This was like we weren't doing this again. That's kind of the message I got. How did you arrive to that conclusion? Like I think commitment is really, really powerful in marriage, and you guys just sound like you're like we are making this commitment. What made that happen?
For me, as you know, when I graduated from high school, I kind of started college, but I just wanted to I had a great childhood and I had great examples of my parents, and I just wanted to have that. I wanted to have that family experience continue on in my adult life, I guess. And so when my marriage fell apart, I was devastated because I thought I had failed my dream. And so when I came across a chance to have a do-over, I was not going to fail.
Kevin?
Oh, I think that coming out of a bad marriage, the last 3 years of my first marriage were ultra, ultra, ultra stressful. And coming out of that marriage, I didn't want to go through that again. In fact, right out of that marriage, the guy that introduced Tracy and I, he had to work really hard for me to even want to make that phone call. And because I wasn't ready for a new relationship. I didn't want it. I wasn't interested. I was still working a lot of hours per week. I was managing my household. I was cooking for my kids. I was doing laundry. I mean, I was full of everything. I couldn't take on anything else. When after I met Tracy, she, I told you that we had the 4 dates, but we spent pretty much the whole summer together, without having any commitment to me in those first few weeks. She was more of a mother to my kids than their mother was a mother, and she opened my eyes to what a relationship and what a family could be. So she changed my thought process. And I was the same way. I was determined. I wasn't going to have another relationship that was going to be or end the way that one did. And I also, I guess you do some searching inside a little bit, some inflection, I think is what it's called. And I knew that there were some changes that I needed to make because my wife chasing off in other directions wasn't totally her. I had to take some responsibility for that as well. If I was making her as happy as she should have been, maybe she wouldn't have wandered away.
That leads into my next question, which you guys had mentioned earlier, was that when you did get married, you talked about baggage. Well, what about yourself? What did you learn about yourself or your baggage? You kind of alluded to it there that there were some things about yourself that you needed to look at and examine. So Kevin or Tracy, whoever wants to start with that one, was there anything like that you're like, oh gosh, I better pay attention to this part of myself to make sure that this really works?
Actually, it was for me, it was I better pay attention to my bride. Because I don't know that I paid enough attention to Carol. I don't know that I think it was kind of all about me. You know, I wanted the dad to be the dad. I was the dad, but and I was the husband. But I think I had a lot of me issues, and I needed to kind of calm those down and have us issues instead of me issues.
For me, it was probably both of us had marriages with a lot of infidelity. So the baggage I probably brought was trust. Being able to just get past that and start with a clean slate. It was very helpful that Kevin is the exact opposite of my first husband. So that was, easier there. But probably just the trust and letting my heart go again. So my baggage was that. I was a little protective of my heart and my feelings, and so I had to work with that.
Yeah. Alexis, do you have any questions?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for sharing that. That was really beautiful. And secondly, I was wondering about what tips you have around blending a family with kids. You kind of talked a little bit about how you walked in their shoes and how you guys communicated and different things like that to be able to connect with your kids. But I have lots of friends who have been in blended family situations, and obviously there comes with a lot of different struggles and new insights that each parent and each couple has to change and adapt to. So what do you feel like were maybe your top 3 tricks you did to make sure that you were taking care of your children, but you were also taking care of your marriage that was new and budding?
That was a hard one to find Kevin and I time with trying to put the kids together so that everybody felt like they were getting equal time and equal love. Kevin and I decided early on that we took a lot of vacations. We tried to always have the family all together, but go somewhere to have fun with an added distraction, I guess. And then the second year in our marriage, I told Kevin, I'm like, we need to go without kids. And he was like, what? No, I'm not going without the kids. And I'm like, yeah. So we went without the kids, and they were fine, and it was heaven. And they even missed us. So we made that a tradition every other year. Kids vacation, next year, parents vacation. And so for us, that was, and also Kevin's kids called me mom right out of the gate. And my son was young enough, he called Kevin dad. And that was something we did not have to overcome. And that can be a barrier for a lot of people. But I've since learned that you have to allow the kids to identify you how they choose to identify you. And so I wasn't going to say you have to call me mom. I wanted to be the part and fill the need so that they would view me as the mom, and Kevin the same. And so we worked really hard at that too. Did that answer your question?
I loved that.
Okay.
And then I was also wondering, you mentioned some books, you've read a lot of books around parenting and your situation with mental health, and I'm assuming some things around remarriage. We try to give a lot of our viewers resources in many different ways. And so if you have any of books that are your favorites or other things that you've learned a lot from, we'd love to hear about those too.
Well, marriage books, we probably should.
We wrote on blank pages for that book.
Actually, what I will say as far as that goes, and the listeners can take it for what it's worth, but once we incorporated God into our lives and our family, that was huge. That was one of the biggest turning points for us as a couple and for our 3 children. As far as trying to deal with the mental health issues, we did read a lot of books on ADHD, and we've read a lot of books on schizophrenia. My favorite one, and the one that we use often, well, there's 2 of them. One's called Schizophrenia for Dummies, and now I'm trying to remember the name. He talks, oh my gosh, if I'd known you were going to ask that, I could look it up. But it's been so helpful because it talks a lot about reflective listening for schizophrenic people, and that also works in relationships. Doesn't have to be with mental illness. It's been very helpful with our adult children. You know, if they say something, I will repeat it back to them how I interpreted it, because it's not often what they were trying to say. And that has been very helpful with our adult kids.
Good. Once you find it, we'll add it to our show notes.
Yeah.
Is it by the Levines?
I think I have no problem. I can find it.
Is it by the Levines? I just looked it up really quickly.
Yeah. Yes. What's the name of
Schizophrenia
it?
for Dummies, book by Irene S. Lean and Jerome Levine.
Okay, that's one of them, and then the other one is there's
I
2
think
of
that
them.
this guy's last name is Miller, and his brother was schizophrenic, and he's a psychiatrist, and so he talked about his experiences and his learning curve, and talked about he gave us great perspective on mental illness as a whole, and specifically schizophrenia. And I think his last name was Miller.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Yeah, we can look
Thank
at it.
you.
But we refer
And then one day you will have your own book, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Tracy, please do, after all of
Yeah.
these. Love, I like to call it love, sweat, and tears, right? Through the years. Good for you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That was incredible. Thanks for sharing that. I have a child with ADHD too, so I know the struggle there, and being the target of
Yes.
a lot of
Yeah.
the emotional part of that. And I can definitely attest to what you say about, when the whole family's on board with religion, that is a great foundation to keep the ship afloat and going in one direction.
Yeah.
So thanks for
How
sharing
old
that.
is your son?
How old is your son? Yeah.
How old is your son?
Oh, my
The one that has
kids?
ADHD.
I have 4. She is 12.
Okay.
So
Well, just so you know, I have talked to my older son quite a bit as now that he's an adult. And he asked me when he was probably in his early 20s, he says, why was I always so angry? And at that moment, I realized he had no idea of why he did react and what he did do. And he still to this day has no idea why he was angry. He still struggles with anger. And so I just think it's so unknown for them. And so for me to try to figure it out, forget it. So it's just literally trying to help love them through it and make it as soft as I possibly can. The consequences, I don't know, but that was helpful to know, because I thought I was going crazy. I thought it was provoking, or I thought it was. And he's really good at manipulating. So I thought, man, he's manipulating me to a point I think I am crazy. But it was just simply, he didn't know what he was doing either. And it was just, pure emotion, no thought process.
yeah, it for me it can be, and my wife, it can be challenging, and we did find a way to cope through it through religion, and it's still challenging, but it's definitely good to have a coping mechanism, like you said, to really realize that they're not really aware of that, and I think that helps a lot to excuse, like, okay, it's not personal. They're not aware of it. It's more of just this thing that's happening, and trying to manage it that way is a good starting point.
Well, and try to understand how much anxiety is inside of them, because they are feeling that.
Yeah.
That's their life. That and they don't know how do you stop feeling anxious if you're always anxious?
Yeah,
And then if
the
you
empathy
become accustomed to
is
it,
very important. I agree.
Yeah.
yeah,
Realizing that,
So-
what I like, Dave says this a lot. He's like, people do things for reasons that make sense to them, and that's a really empathetic statement to me. And it's something I try to remember a lot too. Is like, okay, well, it makes sense to her. She's going through it. She is feeling that, and not to take it, any other way than that. So, thanks for sharing that. I think that's going to help a lot of people, and it's amazing to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Kevin and Tracy, thank you so much for hanging on a little bit afterwards and for sharing your story and experiences and wisdom with us here on the podcast. We sure appreciate it.
We're so glad to have met you.
Well, thank you.
A pleasure.
Glad to meet you, and this was kind of fun. It kind of made me think back. I was like, oh my gosh, it's been so long. But you know what? The wounds have healed. We survived the war, and now we're just marching on in happiness. There we go. We'll call it that.
Fantastic.
May you continue. Have a good fall season, you and your family.
Yeah.
Tracy and Kevin. And
Yeah.
You too.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a few minutes to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. When you hit the like button and leave a comment, your feedback helps us improve the show. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and connect with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and on Facebook at Stronger Marriage. Be sure to share with us what topics you want us to explore or what you loved about today's episode. If you want even more resources to improve your relationship connection, visit our website at strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producers Rex Polanis and Alexis Alcott and the team at Utah State University. And you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission